Let me turn you down a bit there. I gotta keep it low. I want to keep my vibrations low tonight. Low. Greater light. Oh, I need to turn you down some more. This is about transparency, y'all. This is about transparency. Can God see himself when he look at you? Can God see herself when she look at you? If you are the mirror, what do you look like to God? Does God even recognize you? You know, some people, y'all know that feeling. Some of you look in the mirror and be like, who am I? Stare in the mirror long and hard, waiting for something to jump out. Ain't nothing jumping out. Just stand in the mirror like, dog, what? Daring to see a ghost. Can't see no ghost or nothing. You gotta go watch a movie to see a ghost. Oh boy. Well. Let me do a mic check. Make sure I'm coming in. Make sure I'm coming in real loud. Very loud. Loud and clear. Oh my goodness. What's that on the screen? Oh, what is that? All right. So nanotechnology. Start over. Greater light, everyone. I'm gonna keep talking about zinc. But before I do, the waivers have hit the table. The wave has hit the table. A tsunami of waivers. Okay. Y'all remember when we were watching, those who were here with me, we were watching the nano particle, the work group, Pcast. Yeah, you remember? Okay. And during that live, I said that it seems like it's more like waivers that they're doing. You know, the waivers that be in the small writing at the end that say, don't say we didn't tell you, and you can't come back and sue us later on. And this message is to the world, and we're telling it to you on the government site. We're telling it to you that you need to go ahead and come in and sign the waiver saying that you're not going to accept cybersecurity trust mark. And they put out all the waivers the other day. I started not to pay it any attention. I said, I need to stay on zinc. Maybe not. Maybe I don't need to talk about anything because Elon Musk is trying to distract me, y'all. Now he gonna come talking about some ESG. Like he going after the big dogs now. Now he trying to be somebody superhero or something. He said they need to be very transparent. He said, I'm talking about all the big capital, like the videos that I did with the what do you call them? The people, the investors. Remember, I was at South Florida Evaluation and I was talking about the name of the investors on the side of the building. And then I took you to Brickell Avenue and showed you one of the investors' buildings. Huh? Oh, Elon, he didn't put, it's like he took his heavy falcon, and said, boom, on the table. ESG, I did some investigation to see what he's talking about. He said, look, y'all, sit back and watch Pro. I can distract her right now. I'm going to give her what she desires. They got to be all the way transparent. Or, wait, what is it that he said? What did he say about ESG? Maybe he didn't say that. Maybe that's an artificially intelligent created media scam. Back to NIST. No, Pcast. I'm going to read this waiver. I hope I can get through it. Y'all know how I do. I'll start reading and get tired quick until you go there and read it for yourself, But I sort of feel like this is a bedtime story. So I might want to go ahead and complete it, Let's see if I could do this like them long Bible study nights. When Bible study be getting good, them nights you didn't even want Bible study to end. Y'all remember them nights? Y'all ever had any them Bible study nights? Look around Bible study, it's almost 1 o'clock in the morning. Y'all don't remember Bible study nights like that? Oh, goodness. Let me see if I can read this. No, first let me play the video. So that's going to be an hour. I might not be able to read that one, y'all, because I'm going to go ahead and play this nanotech Pcast message one more time before I show you the paper that they said would be released for the president to sign. And they sent it over on the 28th. And at the end of it, it says waiver, waiver, waiver. How many waves did they put in there? Let's see. Let's see how many waves they threw down in here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, dang. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Dang, I'm going too fast. 12, 13. 14, 15. Oh, they got so many waivers in here. They got the word waiver in here over 15 times. Deja vu. Here we go. I'm turning you down just a little bit more there. Executive Order on Federal Register and Development in support of domestic manufacturing and United States jobs. By the authority vested in me as president by the Constitution and the laws of the United States of America, it is hereby ordered as follows. Section 1. Policy. The United States maintains an unparalleled innovation ecosystem with world-class universities, federal laboratories, research centers, and technology incubators, supported in part by federal investment. Our world is healthier, smarter, more connected, more sustainable because of the federal taxpayers' investment in discovery and innovation that has supported the commercialization of new products and services. My administration has prioritized support for our unique innovation ecosystem by reinvesting across sectors in research and development, demonstrations, education, and necessary infrastructure to accelerate the transition of discoveries quickly from the lab to the marketplace. This investment is designed to produce cutting-edge technologies that support the competitiveness, domestic manufacturing capacity, and well-being of the United States economy, United States workers, our communities, and our national security, ensuring the commercialization of federally funded inventions by United States manufacturers while maintaining intellectual property rights will build on the successful legacy of the United States in spurring economic growth and enhancing United States competitiveness through research and development. It will also further our joint research and development work with partners and allies to strengthen the resilience of global critical supply chains and secure America's leadership in delivering a net zero emissions economy by no later than 2050. Pause. But they said somewhere in somebody's news today that by 2025, something, right? I don't know. I didn't see it. Somebody told me it just went across the screen. Therefore, it is the policy of my administration that when new technologies and products are developed with support from the United States government, they will be manufactured in the United States whenever feasible and consistent with applicable law. Are they talking about fentanyl? What are they talking about? I don't know because they got a whole oversight, 42 pages, that needs to be reviewed by somebody. Coordination and consultation. The Assistant to the President in National Security Affairs, the Assistant to the President for Economic Policy, and the Director of Office of Science and Technology Policy shall coordinate the executive branch actions necessary to implement this order through the interagency, my bad. Okay, a new word, huh? Interagency process identified in the National Security Memorandum 2 of February 4, 2021, renewing the National Security Council system. Oh, and those who are going to be left behind, they're giving you a head start. All the chips you desire. They got all types of programs that you're going to be able to sign on to for your chips that you're staying here and you're accepting. You need to take one of these programs that they have out here for you. I'm telling you, I'm going to go over that too. Let's see how long I can stay up and do this. Renewing the National Security Council system. Implementing this order, the heads of executive departments and agencies shall, as appropriate and consistent with applicable law, consult outside stakeholders, such as those in the industry, academia, including historically Black colleges and universities, tribal, colleges and universities, and other minority-serving institutions, non-governmental organizations, communities, labor unions, and state, local, tribal, territorial, and governments in order to implement the policy identified in Section 1 of this order. In order to implement the policy identified in Section 1 of this order, I can't do it. I can't read it all. Somebody else will have to read it. I will do you the favor of showing the bottom of the screen where it's just saying waiver, waiver, waiver. This is a waiver to the United States. This is a waiver to all the American workers. This is ensuring the future of made in all America by all of America's workers. Bayh-Dole Acts. This is an executive order 14005. It's lengthy. I don't want to read it. But they say you got 90 days to respond to this order. United States. Everybody. This is a notice. And it's a notice with a waiver. And they putting everything on how they feel and what they gonna put in the book. They said that ain't coming out till towards the end of the year. But they say you have by the beginning of 2024 to have made your decision, because they putting out the waivers. They putting out their transparency paperwork and everything. They say, but you need to get with it. Y'all answer from the working group by the beginning of 2024. Let me let the video play, and then I could come back over here. Oh, I got to share the screen. Oh, I have guests. Greater light. Hold up. I'm doing something. I can't see who's there. I'm about to do the share screen. From the Pcast nanotechnology order. The paperwork, the executive order that just got signed is a direct connect to this video that I'm about to play. So this was the 27th. Then they did this on the 28th. Hold up, let me see. Am I sharing? Here we go. This executive order right here. And they said they was going to release the paperwork. But everything in here is a waiver. On top of this waiver, since now they put transparency out there on the table, now Elon Musk coming with ESG to make them be even more transparent. And that's going to put him in a win-win, because he's attacking this business, but he's attacking, or he's playing monopoly with the head of this system right here, the billionaire. His name is I can't remember his name right now. Yeah, when I looked and went into ESG, I saw some guy, his name, I can't think of his name. I could easily click this, but I don't want to lose track of what I'm supposed to be doing. There's some billionaire, real estate corporate entity. goodness, I'm doing it. Let me get the Pcast. Let me play this video. Oh, and one more time, let me see who it is that it come over here to chill out with me. Perry, King Ellis. Yeah, I'm all over the place right now. I'm all over the place.
Welcome, everyone.
I done got
I'm Arthi Prabhakar. I'm one of the co-chairs of the President's Council of Advisors on Science and Technology, and I'm really happy to be here with my co-chairs, Maria Zuber and Francis Arnold, and our wonderful group of Pcast members, and warm welcome to everyone who's joining us from the broader public as well. One thing I want to note before we dive in is that the next meeting that's in September will be in person in Washington. And I'm always happy to see the tile of faces, but it's always much better when we're together. So we're very much looking forward to that. I want to remind everyone that this meeting is public. It's being recorded. And this recording of the meeting will be available on the Pcast website for anyone who misses the live stream and wants to see it. And with that, I'm going to hand it off to Maria to moderate this first session about a Pcast letter to the president.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Arthi. And let me also extend my welcome to Pcast members and the public. We're going to talk about science engagement here today. Science communication plays a crucial role in today's world, as scientific advancements and discoveries are constantly shaping our lives and our society. Effective science engagement involves conveying complex or unfamiliar concepts in an understandable manner to audiences that include policymakers, the general public, and other stakeholders. For example, accurate and up-to-date information forms a critical contribution to decision-making in areas such as public health and safety, environmental regulation, semiconductors, AI, you name it. Conveying scientific concepts clearly and transparently builds public trust and facilitates adoption of science-based outcomes that could improve or even save lives. For all these reasons, the topic of science communication is of great interest among the members of Pcast. So now I'd like to introduce Pcast members Phil Venables, Vicky Sato, and Saul Perlmutter, who are the co-leads of our Science Communications Working Group, and they'll present the results of their deliberations and answer any questions from Pcast members. So Phil, Vicky, and Saul, take it away.
Thank you, Maria, and good morning to everyone. I'm Vicky Sato and one of the co-chairs of this working group on science engagement. I'm pleased to open the presentation on the proposal of the working group addressing the topic of advancing public engagement with the sciences. We look forward to your feedback. By way of reminder, I will say that Pcast reports require public discussion and voting by the entire council, with the opportunity for contributions from the public. Recommendations by Pcast reflect the independent judgment of the council and are not subject to any interagency review or approval. Next slide, please. The broad topic of effective public communication on matters in science and technology is of high interest across the council, and this is reflected in the composition of the working group. We have benefited from the contributions of members who span social sciences, life sciences, mathematics, physical sciences, academia, and the private sector. This diversity of expertise has enriched our discussions and analyses. Next slide. In addition, we have had the benefit of input from external experts in the field of science and community engagement, as well as the experience and perspectives of representatives from a number of government agencies. Next slide. As Maria mentioned in her opening remarks, our work centered around the fact that the innovation and progress driven by science and technology impact everyone. From climate science to medicines to space exploration to artificial intelligence, what scientists discover and invent touches all of our lives. But the language of science can be complex, and the evolving nature of science understanding is not static. How can we communicate more effectively with the public on matters of deep importance to individuals, families, and communities? continue the slide, please. Happily, Americans have had a historical confidence that science and scientists will act in the public's best interests, and this has been reflected in polling of various kinds over the years. But this has put this historical confidence and trust at risk. The rapid information landscape changing so fast, driven by modern technologies, continuing legacies of social and economic abuse, and an overall decline of trust in institutions, pressure so on the trust Americans historically had in scientists. Americans want to have their values and priorities considerably in decisions that affect their lives. We do to create public policies that are informed by both accurate scientific understandings and community values. Our working group feels strongly that we provide access to accurate and specific information, vibrant dialogue between experts, communities, and government agencies that are responsible for research and development. This is not a task. Next slide. We spent quite a bit of time talking to stakeholders on this topic, and we learned critically that it is not enough to refine how we talk to the public. We can talk more loudly, we can talk with greater specificity and earnestness, but in fact, what we really need to do is more listening. And this is the message that we heard loudly across the demographics that we surveyed. We must create both opportunities for community dialogue and incorporate the fruit of that dialogue into policies that better incorporate the needs and values of the community. How do we do this? Next slide, please. Happily, we have found that over the past half century, examples of community-informed science policy have been rich, informative, and constructive, and occasionally and enlighteningly contentious. Neither the concept or the practice of it is new, and we include examples of this kind of community dialogue in the report. What we need now, we think, is to shine a brighter light on the importance of this kind of dialogue. Right? And we have chosen to advance our idea, and a brief letter to the President highlights the importance of the need for our world-class science and technology agents to amplify their engagement with the public. The letter is simple, it's direct, it is supported by a number of efforts conducted by the National Academy, by the CDC, by Health and Human Services, by the Office of Science and Technology Policy that underpin the data that supports the idea that enhanced community engagement, skillfully and transparently done, can be an important force for improving our engagement, conveying science advancement, science change, and science challenges with the community. My co-lead Saul Perlmutter will continue the presentation by describing our specific recommendations to the President. Saul, over to you.
Thank you, Vicki. Well, good morning, everybody.
I'm going to send in my comments. Once I email my comments, I'm going to make my comments. I'm going to attach it to the video. I'm going to email. I'm going to email them. I'm sending in. If you go to Federal Register under this executive order, you can post your comments or leave your email, leave your response. They have the links for the comments to respond. I mean, it's the people, excuse me, for the people to respond. And you have them, hold on, where is it? Had that pepper in my throat. Hold on. Goodness gracious.
The first of the recommendations reflects a commitment from multiple parties, and the recommendation is to issue a clarion call to federal agencies to make science and technology communication and public engagement a core component of their mission. And the idea is that an essential pillar of this effort is in applications are included in agency senior level policy development and decision-making processes. We heard that the elevation of that role in the agency made a very big difference. Please. We also heard clearly that there is real expertise needed here. There has been real advances in understanding how to reach and work with communities and statistically represented publics. And the expertise is even more necessary in a federal context with FACA and Paperwork Reduction Act rules. And so the recommendation too is that we establish a new office to support federal agencies in their continuing efforts to develop and build participatory public engagement and effective science and technology community. But this office should consist of individuals with a range of expertise who can partner with or deploy to the agencies, including assistance in the use of social engagement and cutting-edge digital technology. The two useful that one the management and budget, and the F office within the government administration. So the intent here, of course, is that the agencies should be able to fund the expertise. Also, when it gets deployed to the agencies, this may provide a source of recruitment. If I go to the next slide, please, I'll describe a little bit of some of the feedback that we've received already on this. First, we should say that we had a very enthusiastic overall response, and so not only for the event, but also positive feedback for the letter. People may be surprised to hear. There is go to each of these in detail, about just a few of them. One is that we can changing the idea of the expertise in policy development in recommendation 1 to having input to it. But in the end, the working group felt that stronger imperative was needed. But we were hearing that this had not been enough in previous situations in the agencies. One of the other concerns bottom here is, although there was a very strong desire, a very good support for the recommendations to mandate to the agencies to have these capacities, one of the responses raised the concern that a new office might detract from the in-house. And here we really wanted the first sentence of our recommendation to emphasize that this new office should be a supplement, not supplant, the agency efforts. And of course, the thought would be that it's difficult to build this expertise, and that this office would actually then be able to be recruiting not only for the one office, but it would be a way of all the other agencies of this kind, and eventually recruiting them. So, so in the next, let me just conclude then by going back to Vicky's main points by quoting from the last paragraph of the letter. I think in part because of the historic leadership of the United States in innovation, in medicine, energy, digital technology, space exploration, and many other areas, we are recognized as a country of almost unlimited possibilities. These advances can not only be inspiring, but also empowering for all Americans, offering tools for identifying problems and inventing solutions, but only our communities understand that they own these tools as key participants in the decision-making process. So these recommendations, we have the opportunity to help build the thriving society that results when science and technology are in everyone's toolbox. Thank you. I'll turn back to Marie.
Great. Thank you very much, Vicky and Saul, for that very clear and concise presentation of the results. So, so get your questions ready, Zoom hands, And let me start out with Chair's prerogative. So first of all, let me convey my personal enthusiasm for this report and topic. This is so critical in order for the public to really understand and communicate with how science can be helpful to them. So thank you very much for that. Did you, in your discussions and explorations, did you collect any information or get input on the best way to structure the individuals who work in engagement within the agencies? Okay, so what the difference between a single office within an agency where you can deploy people versus in given areas to just have people embedded who are engaged in it. Did you do any investigations into that?
We had, as part of our deliberations, we talked to people at the U.S. Digital Service as well as people in GSA who participated in structures like this. And Phil, you might want to talk a little bit about the example of the U.S. Digital Services and the different ways in which that group has been effectively accessed and deployed by agencies at different times.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I think, the reason we were kind of like the US Digital Service as an example is this is one of those things that balances providing a central capability that enables a set of expertise to be developed, but to Vicky and Saul's point in the slides, it doesn't supplant the needed expertise and capability in the agencies. So as the agencies grow and integrate this function across their various different teams, they can pull on this central service. And that's been the same case you've seen as agencies have expanded their technology and technology innovation using the digital service to do that. I think in terms of what we saw from some of the agencies, but also in some of the private sector organizations that we consulted with, one of the core elements of success in organizations that drive this type of communications is to have that engaged in the parts of a department or agency's activities. And this comes back to the recommendation one about appropriately elevating the people to be connected to every activity as early on as possible. So it's that classic balance of central expertise and growing expertise, but being plugged in as early as possible into every activity to shape those activities to facilitate that communication.
Great. Thanks very much. Okay, the next question, we'll turn it over to our co-chair, Frances Arnold.
Thank you. And actually, that was a great question that was also on my mind. Do you envision that this new office would detail people to the agencies? And I find it very useful to have a concrete example. Could you give us an example of how a science communication, science engagement problem actually, what is an example of a problem and what is an example of the expertise that would be provided to the agencies? Presumably these are not scientists, and technologists, but experts in science communication, social science. So how would they work together?
Also a great question. And clearly, there's not a lot of experience in this kind of organization. So we're proposing by analogy or homology, if you will. I think it's important that this office have the flexibility to be current, both with regard to their expertise in the rapidly changing field of digital technologies, but equally in the area of social sciences, which is changing rapidly. And the experiences there have been modern, current, and rich. And I think I'll ask Jen or Lisa Cooper, who were, critical to our thinking in this area, to maybe comment on some of the examples in health and human services and in other areas where current practices and thinking in social sciences is shaping the way we interact with the public. Jen or Lisa?
Okay, I'm happy to chime in. I mean, one example that I can think of, and it's actually an example we gave in the Public Health Workforce Report, was the Community Engagement Alliance Against COVID-19. And so that's one of these sort of examples in which there's been expertise at the level of one of the federal agencies that's, leading this effort at NIH. And there's a broad representation of stakeholders within that partnership, but there's bi-directional communication at every level, and all of the findings that come out of the research program are communicated very rapidly to the public. But before that material is disseminated, there's a lot of input from the community partners, whether they be leaders of community-based organizations or the services, the clients they serve, into the format, into the presentation of the material, the messaging, the appropriateness of the language. There's a lot of input into that before any of the materials are generated and disseminated. And there's a lot of input into what are the appropriate vehicles to use for communication. So, but that whole process is an excellent model, because the partnership that is in place in this initiative really provides the ongoing engagement with people who are who have a voice and who have concerns related to the work that's being done. So that's one example where there's expertise there. There's an office there at the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute of Communication where there's a lot of expertise there. And, we were thinking they could be a model that other agencies could tap into. They also have a consultation service that they've provided for their researchers, but there's no reason why, other federal scientist groups couldn't tap into that as well.
Great. Jen Richardson, do you have anything to add on this?
Yeah, I would just add also, the broader community of social sciences, especially people with expertise in sampling, are required to actually know what different communities think about different emergent technologies. And so you also have a phase in all of these efforts for outreach to really get an accurate picture of what people in various communities think about the question. And that requires separate expertise than some of the straight communications talent that we want to see.
Well, actually, let me follow up, Jen. So then would you envision that this office would have a staff of such experts that would be detailed to agencies upon request for a project? Is that
correct? And it might be in teams. So given what the actual question is or the problem is, the team would say, okay, this is what you need. First, you need someone to help you figure out what this community that you're interested in connecting to thinks about the question. We can help you develop a survey, deploy it, analyze it, give you the information. Then we can move forward with, okay, how do we, answer this call, broadly speaking? How do we help you message in a way that is effective? And of course, that's also something that should be tested, not based on intuition.
But aren't there other mechanisms by which you could engage the broader community of social scientists to get involved as well? Rather than have just a staff.
Probably not in this problem-focused way, right? This agency has this question or this set of problems, and we need someone to answer them, as opposed to what social scientists are doing in their own sort of basic research.
I think we could probably imagine that the experts would know how to, what outside contractors you hire to help build a representative sample for different purposes. So that would not be unusual, but I think it does take expertise even to know what it is you're asking for in that purpose.
Yeah, I think, when you look at other examples of this, the engagement can be a spectrum of things from, small consultation to seek advice, through to full-scale deployment of detailees for extended periods to build a capability in an agency, and then everything on that spectrum in between.
And I think we heard some of this from the U.S. Digital Services Group, where There's a renewing roster of fellows, in that case with digital technological skills, and in our case, probably a broader band of skills. So the pool, if you will, of expertise renews, and it serves as a nexus for a broader community of a broader community that's networked into experts across a variety of communication strategies, if you will.
We may also comment that we definitely heard very different needs from different agencies that are at different levels of advance in this area. And so some of them will be using certain aspects of this expertise. Others might be taking on a large amount of cross deployment because they would need further help getting themselves off the ground.
Great, thank you. Bill Press, you're up next.
Yeah, I think these are terrific ideas, and I think the need to both communicate better with the public and engage better with the public, these are not just in the category of good to do. These are essential to do if the American people are going to benefit from the whole scientific enterprise. At the same time, I think there might be people out there who wonder about what are the guardrails on this, because in past administrations, not all but some, there have been examples of political pressure to miscommunicate science, to engage with the public in sort of biased ways with a predetermined outcome. So I wonder if you thought about what these guardrails could be. I mean, for example, something that comes to my mind is that the head of this office could be a member of the SES, the Senior Executive Service, rather than a political appointee, something specific to make it a non-political office. My question is really, have you thought about that, and what do you think?
Saul, this has been a grounding concern and interest that Saul's been articulating to the group, that it's important that this capability, this attention to public engagement, and this office that we are proposing to be a nucleus for activity, be of a credibility and of a neutrality that can survive different administrations, and that its consistency of purpose and the reputation it needs to build for delivering truth in science, as complex as that may be, is an important part of sustainability. So it's a very good specific suggestion, Bill. We haven't been so detailed in trying to highlight the phenotypes of leadership here, but certainly continuity, credibility, transparency are going to be essential ingredients in any leadership role.
And maybe the one other thing is to echo, Vicky, your earlier point from the slides, that very much of what we were trying to design was something that had a lot more capacity to listen as opposed to just speak. And we're hoping that listening would be of value to all administrations, and that it would provide some longevity.
Great, thank you. Andre Goldsmith.
Thanks so much, and thanks to the committee for this excellent report and set of recommendations. My question is around the role of universities in partnering with federal agencies here. Are they part of the solution or part of the problem, or both, in terms of how to really engage the general public? And then also specifically, how do we engage some of the best science communicators, like people like Isaac Asimov or Stephen Hawkins, who really have engaged the public and their imagination around science? Thanks very much.
That's a great that's a great concept and a great question. I'll speak for myself as a member of this committee. I think universities are an important part of this ecosystem of communication. And I know many universities have established much more outward-facing science discussions, science presentations about discoveries within their institution, as well as on topics that are of interest to the general public, and feature speakers who are skilled and knowledgeable in presenting to the public in different fora. So I certainly see universities as an important part of this ecosystem, not just as a portal, but also as a place where the integrity of science and the responsibility of science to the public gets instilled, if you will, with the teaching. And I think, you know, the current culture around Oppenheimer is an interesting example of this. So I appreciate the question, Andrea, and that's my own take. And I ask others on the working group to express their views as well.
We might want to mention that we're hearing that one of the whole points of the raising the level of the importance of this topic in the agencies was that the agencies wanted the permission to be able to perhaps have programs with universities and other grantees to accomplish some of these goals, but it had not been part of their mission previously in certain cases.
Also, not necessarily that the federal government has to take the lead on every single science communication issue. I think it's actually better to have a broad range of independent voices as well. So I think having lots of dialogue and forums, bringing academics and communications experts and federal agencies together is great, but we shouldn't sort of lean too heavily into trying to sort of dominate like a conversation.
Terrific point.
I think the other thing it's worth remembering is as individual agencies develop good and new practices for doing these types of engagements with universities or others, you can imagine the role of the central service team is to capture that, develop toolkits for that, and promulgate that out. So the other thing that we didn't foot stomp on as much as we probably could have is the notion of that, this is again what the US Digital Service has done a lot of, which is amplifying individual agencies' best practice for the benefit of everybody else by encoding things as toolkits that people can use. And you can imagine this is another example of that. If there's a method of engaging universities, you can imagine that could be replicated quite easily using this central team.
We also heard, correct me if I'm wrong, we also heard from a couple of agencies that the grant issuing power inherent in some of these agencies with this kind of encouragement could lead to more research and innovation in the areas of more effective public engagement in the sciences. So that was another place where highlighting the importance of this activity provides the agencies with different kinds of opportunities for innovation, not just communication.
Okay. Next up, Paula Hammond.
Yes, thank you for a really critical report. I had a question that is really kind of the opposite scenario to Bill Press's question. I think listening is so important. What kinds of tools do you envision or approaches do you envision if upon listening, it's found that there is a good deal of information that is not correct and is influencing how a community receives or understands science without losing trust? I'm wondering if this new agency would have special skill sets in this area, and if you had any thoughts in mind on how to address that.
I'd say that one of the aspects that we were particularly interested in here was the experience where in similar situations, having a dialogue started first before the confrontation about what the fact set has made a big difference. And so the expectation is that one of the reasons to do this kind of two-way engagements early is so that there's more of a conversation going where people might be able to change minds and listen to each other in that respect. And in particular, I think separating out a little bit of the values development and the goals and fears and of different communities early on, as before you also start discussing the constraints of what the science allows or doesn't allow. Also there's been evidence I gather that it makes a difference if that's on the table first before you then try to discuss what the constraints are. Since otherwise people try to express their values and their goals and their fears using the science as the football.
You know, part of the task of sound communication too is, and I think Kiani commented on this in his comment on the report, is science evolves and it changes, and one makes recommendations based on the best information one hopes that one has at the time. But we don't always do a very good job of communicating that fluid nature of science, and the fact that different information, new data, can affect how we think and how we act. So it's, the devil will be in the details, of course, but having people in this group and having leaders of this group who are skilled and balanced in hearing the concerns and being able to communicate not the laws of science, if you will, but the best information that we have and the risks and benefits that are afforded in a particular time as accurately as possible, and to create a sense of continuing dialogue is part of the culture shift we'd like to start to catalyze in a deeper way. It's happening. Some agencies do this already. Some do it very well. Some would like to do more. Others have a somewhat different view. But I think part of our intent here is to emphasize the importance of building a different kind, a more expansive exchange around science and its impact on the country.
All right, Arti Prabhakar.
Well, first and foremost, I want to emphasize the same thing I think Paula just said, which is how happy I was to see this emphasis on listening. We're probably a group of people who know how much easier it is to talk than to listen, but that is really where the value is turning this into two-way. So I really wanted to express my appreciation for the team for coming to that and really focusing on that. To the point about the manipulation of scientific information, in the first week that President Biden was in office, he issued a memorandum to all agencies and departments across government on scientific integrity and evidence-based policy making because he sees it as fundamental to trust in government. And so I think it's just worth remembering that we tend to think about trust in science and in research, but it's actually fundamental to the way I think the whole country relates to its government. So I think really agreed with the point that was being made about that. And then the final thing I'll offer is that I love the fact that you all and the work that you did, you came to the U.S. Digital Service and 18F as a model for bringing expertise in, but then engaging and helping and lifting up many different parts of government. Those efforts came out of the OSTP of about a decade ago. And actually an important trigger for that was the failure of the launch of the Obamacare website, everyone remembers painfully, but that led to some really important improvements through these kinds of mechanisms. And I've often thought about the fact that when I returned to public service in 2022, actually things have gotten extremely better, and now websites that deliver crucial information and services, we just take for granted that we actually can do that across government. And I offer that simply to say that I think when you start efforts like this, you're planting the seeds for something, and I can start to see a future where we are much better at doing this kind of two-way communications to the benefit of research, but also of society. So thanks so much for the effort.
Okay. Eric Horvitz.
Well, thanks. And I have to say it was such a lovely working group, and I enjoyed every minute of it. On the listening question, then, one thing that came up in our discussions was the notion that the world has changed quite a bit in the way various organizations listen and learn about populations, including multiple digital tools that are just foundational now in, for example, commercial sales and marketing. And these kinds of tools and information sources are quite different and much more rigorous and extensive in many ways than small, modest surveys that are done traditionally. And so the idea that the office that we talked about could start leveraging new ways to listen, to understand where the American people are, what the uncertainties are, to help with engagement, came to the fore as a just general direction on modernizing what it is that, how it is that we understand citizens and their understandings.
Comments from the committee on that?
The only thing I would add is that I think that's a very important role for a group like this, but and for an office like this. But it also is very important, I think, that as was mentioned earlier, that we make it very clear that this is in order to understand what the public needs us to hear, and that so that I think people would feel that sense that it's a listening, thoughtful exercise in trying to bring in the public's goals and interests into the different agencies.
Great, thanks, Eric. So I'd like to make another comment that I think relates to a number of the themes that were raised in the discussion here today. So there's one agency for which science engagement and communication was part of their original mandate, and that's NASA. And they've had a lot of time to work on it, and they do it exceptionally well. And one of the things that they make use of is the role of education. Okay, you can't underscore enough how important education is, and NASA actually uses teams of ambassadors who are largely science teachers, but also workers in science museums and libraries and other other institutions where education is important. And in the spirit of transparency and trying to convey thoughtful information and building trust, there are people out there who don't want to believe the government, but people tend to believe their children, and so really putting a strong focus on educating young people on good scientific practices and scientific results, they can be really effective messengers to their parents and grandparents and others in their society. So I'll just put that out there, and that I think a lot can be learned from the way that NASA integrates that.
Strong agreement from another person who has experienced the NASA world.
Right. Kathy Wotecki.
Sure, just to continue this conversation a bit and extend it, there's another model too, and that's the cooperative extension model that is even older than NASA, dates back to 1914, and where the land-grant universities have educators in almost every county that are engaging with the public beyond the traditional educational conveying of information based on agricultural research or human nutrition, to help them with economic development, and more recently bringing data science to local communities to help them better analyze information that they have, visualize it, and help to make better data-informed decisions at the community level. So there's a lot to learn from the different approaches that different agencies have taken to this mandate, and perhaps more resource too available than one agency might not know about what NASA has done or what USDA's experience has done.
So that's super encouraging as well. And we also see this office as a place where agencies can exchange ideas and expertise. We heard this from the agencies that we've talked to, that on this topic, there is not as much exchange of capability, ideas, expertise as is probably optimal or efficient. So it's very heartening actually to hear about the different models that exist, and it's almost like a deep and rich root system that can be tapped into with some renewed energy and hopefully some renewed resource.
Great, thanks for that, Kathy. Laura Green.
Thank you. This is a really terrific report.
it's something that's near and dear to my heart. And I've been involved in some public engagement, I'm sure everyone here has, and the Magnet Lab actually has it as part of their mission, public engagement and education. And so we've had visits from DOE laboratories to try to learn this stuff as they're expanding. And I've heard a lot of famous people tell me that, and you've probably heard this before, that public engagement, everyone is inventing their own new flat tire. And it's a little frustrating when we go around and try to educate people to not be afraid of people who are educators at heart. They're trained for instructional design and they work with the scientist or whatever, and you can make it work. And I think having this I'm very excited by this letter, because I think it has a lot of promise to really carry this information, just as Vicki was saying and Kathy was saying, across agencies, and to make sure that that line of best practices is held open. And thank you very much. This is very exciting.
Great. Thank you, Laura. It's been a fantastic discussion. Are there any additional comments or questions before we bring this letter to a vote? Okay, in that case, I think we can do a voice vote here. All Pcast members who are in favor of accepting this letter to the president on science engagement, could you please make that known?
Aye.
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 Okay. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining? Okay, that's great. We have unanimous support for this. So, so let me thank, well, all of us co-chairs would like to thank Phil Venables, Vicki Sato, Saul Perlmutter, Lisa Cooper, Eric Horvitz, Jen Richardson, Terry Tao, and our staff for the efforts that went into this report. It's really fantastic. Let me tell everybody that the letter will be formatted and copy edited before its release. And we expect this to occur in mid to late August. So when it comes out, it will be published on the Pcast website. So congratulations to the working group. And I'll now turn things back over to Arthi to close out this part of the public session.
Thanks all for a great discussion. We're now going to take a break before the next session. We're going to break for, at least it's lunch here on the East Coast. I don't know what meal you might be in the middle of. We're going to reconvene at 1 p.m. Eastern, and we'll see, the Zoom will turn off. So come back for that for those of you who are joining us from elsewhere. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, everybody.
Hello, I'm Frances Arnold and co-chair of Pcast. And I'd like to welcome back all our Pcast members, as well as interested members of the public, to this assessment, this discussion of the Pcast report to the president on the 7th assessment of the National Nanotechnology Initiative. As you might know, nanotechnology burst onto the science and engineering scene in the 1990s, when we discovered that nanoscale objects could exhibit these novel and incredibly interesting and useful properties that we don't see at larger scales. We were at the beginning of a revolution in our understanding of the world at that scale. And the National Nanotechnology Initiative, NNI, was introduced in order to help the United States stay at the forefront of this exciting new field of nanoscience and nanotechnology. Over the subsequent years, amazing new methods were developed to probe the nanoscale and deliver knowledge and understanding of how such systems behave. And importantly, we learned how to manipulate matter at the nanoscale, which enabled us to bring to market whole new products in everything from energy to biomedicine. Thus, much of the NNI vision has been realized, such that nanoscience and nanotechnology are embedded into our products and into our thinking. I'd like to now introduce Lisa Su and Bill Daly, who co-lead the Pcast working group to assess the National Nanotechnology Initiative. They'll present their assessment and then answer questions from Pcast members. Lisa and Bill.
Very good. Thank you, Francis, for that introduction. And my name is Lisa Sue. I'll start, and then my partner, Bill Daly, will also help me with this. So again, next page, please. So as we discussed earlier, these Pcast reports are really established for us as a working group to review matters. And this is our opportunity for the full council to discuss our conclusions. As Francis mentioned, in this particular case, for the NNI assessment, this is a congressionally mandated assessment that we do periodically. And so we had a great working group on this. Next page, please. Bill Daly and myself co-led this, and Paula Hammond and John Benovitz joined us in this assessment. And we will say, as part of this assessment, we had significant contributions from the Science and Technology Policy Institute, STIPI, who helped in some of the research as well as the overall report. So we thank them for their contributions to this. Next page, please. As part of the assessment, we did consult a number of parties, both within the federal government that have been working on nanotechnology, as well as some in academia, to give us some perspective of where the, first of all, where the entire field of nanoelectronics is in the United States and across the world today, as well as the NNI initiative in and of itself. So we thank all of those who helped us in this assessment. Next page, please. So as we take a look, and as Francis mentioned, nanotechnology research has been absolutely critical to U.S. innovation. If you think about the progress over the last 30 years, it is something that we should all be very proud of. Nanotechnology is now, really essential to so many industries. Certainly, microelectronics as one. If you think about just transistor technology and how much the nanomaterials are impact what we can do in terms of scaling to smaller dimensions, as well as adding more capability. When you think of the mRNA vaccines and just how transformational that was to us over the last few years. You see that liquid nanoparticles were used to deliver over 676 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines just in the United States. Since over the last few years. You think of next generation energy technology as another area where nanomaterials have become so important to some of the research in that area. And it's generated both significant jobs as well as significant revenue for nanotechnology companies. So clearly, this has been a huge and positive impact, to the U.S. in terms of innovation leadership as well as economic, return. Next page, please. Now, if you look at the history of the NNI initiative, back in the late 90s, I think federal leaders and really the scientific community recognized how transformational nanotechnology could be in strengthening our global competitiveness. And so the NNI program was put together with this 21st Century Nanotech R&D Act in 2003. And as part of it, there was significant governance effort, because the thought process was that for something so large, it would be really helpful to have a governance infrastructure and also coordination across the federal government, as well as a review process. And this is part of that review process that was put in place. The coordination of the NNI has been very much led by the NSTC, the National Science and Technology Council's NSET subcommittee, as well as facilitated by a National Nanotechnology Coordination Office. So that was part of our determination in understanding where should the NNI initiative go next. So with that, let me hand it off to Bill to talk about some of our findings. Bill?
Thank you, Lisa. Can I have the next slide, please? So what we found as we met with the different people is that nanotechnology has been transformational. It made huge contributions in medicine, energy, electronics, and really improved our economic engine. But since the legislation was passed 20 years ago, it has matured. And what we found is that most of the people we talked to weren't really focusing on the nanotechnology themselves, but rather on applications of it to different areas. And as we moved from this emerging field back when the legislation was passed to a mature field today, and it's clear that the machinery that was put in place when it was an emerging field is really no longer the right machinery for something in its mature phase. So if we can go to the next slide, we'll start with our recommendations. So the first recommendation is that we recommend that the president work with Congress. This is a congressionally mandated piece of machinery, the NCO and the NSET, to sunset or substantially revise the 21st Century Nanotechnology R&D Act. So we're not saying here that they should sunset nanotechnology. Nanotechnology is hugely important. The government should continue to support R&D, infrastructure, education, research in this area. But we don't need the structures we put in place 20 years ago when this was a nascent field just emerging. Something different is required today, and something much more streamlined. The biennial reviews by Pcast national academies are really no longer adding value, and it's not clear that a coordination office is needed for a field that is this mature. So if we go on to the next recommendation. NSET, the subcommittee on nanoscale science and engineering technology, is doing great work, and they need to continue doing that work. And so we recommend that the director of OSTP work with the executive director of NSTC to direct the NSET subcommittee to continue leadership and federal coordination of nanotechnology, strategic planning, implementation, and outreach. They are the right people to continue doing this job under whatever streamlining or sunsetting is done as a result of our first recommendation. And if we have the final recommendation slide. And the other thing that came out as we talked to the different people who are the real central figures in the nanotechnology world is that everything they were doing was interdisciplinary. It was applying nanotechnology to medicine, or applying nanotechnology to electronics, or applying it to agriculture. And there are huge workforce issues. A lot of what we're limited by is talented people who are trained, not just in nanotechnology, but in one of these other disciplines as well. So final recommendation is we recommend that NSET enhance experiential learning programs for nanotechnology students and scientists to become the collaborative multidisciplinary workforce that's needed for nanotechnology and other technologies to move forward. With that, I think we can turn this over to the question and answer period.
Great, thank you very much. And I'd like to encourage members of Pcast to answer questions, to address questions to the working group and all members of the working group. So I just want to clarify something, especially for members of the public who might not be familiar with all these structures. You want to sunset part of it, but you're encouraging NSET to continue. Could you distinguish those structures?
So we're recommending that the law that was passed in 2003 and passed with no time limit, it would continue forever, has really finished its course, and that they should sunset the legislation. And the legislation establishes things like the coordination office. But nanotechnology is still a crucial technology and needs to have something like NSET, facilitating the interaction between different agencies.
So why don't you explain briefly what NSET is for the public?
Okay, so NSET is a subcommittee of the NSTC. It's the subcommittee, if I can remember the acronym here, for nanoscale science and engineering technology. And so it is a subcommittee whose primary function is coordinating with different federal agencies that are involved with nanotechnology so that their work dovetails well together and is not duplicative and doesn't leave gaps. And they're doing a great job of that. What we would like to do is to encourage them to continue that work. But a lot of the other machinery established by the legislation is really no longer required now that nanotechnology is a mature field.
Thank you, Bill.
And I'll just chime in because maybe it's helpful. Bill, I think you really encapsulated it. The National Science and Technology Council is a long-standing coordination body with many different committees and subcommittees that spans federal R&D and allows for a platform for coordination, because just as in nanotechnology, there are many areas where different funders and performers of R&D are working with some commonalities across the base technology. They might be pursuing different aspects of it. And we think, I think from what you all have described, nanotechnology fits perfectly into that. The National Nanotechnology Initiative and the legislation that Congress passed almost 20 years ago, that was saying we need to build a new foundational area. And I think this group has done a terrific job of laying out the progress that's come from that. But now the fact that the existing coordination structure is what I'm hearing in this report, you're saying that's adequate. And I think that makes a lot of sense given the maturity. Thanks.
Thanks very much. I think Pcast and the public will be grateful for a little bit of color there. Laura Green.
Yes, Artie, thank you. Thank you very much for that explanation. That was along the lines of the question that I asked. Nano, I like to think of this as that we did such a good job in our own nanotechnology development that we've gone into the next phase, and you explained that very well. So I just would like to hear a little bit more about the coordination. For instance, in my field, we're doing less correlated electrons and more nano, what's going to be the next qubit. It's a very different kind of physics. That's also nano. I was on one of these committees that gave the Kavli nanoscience to Casper-Chris 9. That's also a nano. These are extremely broad areas. How do you think it will work to coordinate these so the applications and also further science going back and forth isn't lost and goes across agencies? And let me also add, there's a lot of funding that's gone into establishing nano centers around the country in different laboratories. And we don't want to, how would we repurpose those or make use of those? Big question. Thank you.
I'm happy to let the study members address that, or if you want me to, I'm happy to, whatever you'd like.
I can take a stab at it, and we maybe should have different people comment on that. So, again, I think what is being recommended here is not that nanotechnology or the infrastructure, the shared R&D facilities or any of that be sunset. What we're recommending is that the legislation, which mandates a certain coordination structure and periodic review, be sunset. I think that the facilities are getting good use and delivering good value to the scientific community. And I think that the subcommittee itself, NSET, is doing a great job of the coordination, and that should continue. It's not clear that a separate coordination office for nanotechnology in its mature phase is needed at this point. But we're not suggesting that there be any less research and development in nano. And I think a lot of the things you referred to really sort of reinforce what we found in talking to the different players in this field, is that the real action now is in the application of it to different fields, to quantum and to these lipid particles for delivering medicine, and to gene editing materials and the like. And so the underlying technology itself has become mature, and the real action is now in the application of that technology. And so the structure needs to evolve with that, to best focus the resources on the applications.
That's right. I think the only thing I would add to that is just to reinforce, sort of the primary point that Bill made. There's no intention to reduce the let's call it the investment in nano as that happens. Actually, what we find is there are nano investments all over the federal government and all throughout research. This is really just about the mechanics of how it's implemented and trying to really modernize, frankly, how we deal with sort of nano within the federal government.
Arthur, do you want to comment?
I think they said it.
Okay, very good. Sue Desmond-Hellmann.
Great. This is terrific. I had I think a straightforward question for either Lisa or Bill. As you talk about the mature field of nanotechnology, and we all know if there's a medicine that would go through the FDA's safety and efficacy process, I have a question about potential toxicity. I know when Nano was first a part of the scientific dialogue, we all thought there was so much promise, but also potential peril, including in how you manufacture and get rid of materials or discard things. How do you feel about the state of maturity on the safety side as a broad field? And do you think there's enough oversight for the public to feel like nanotechnology has oversight on macro safety or toxicity issues in general?
Can I take a stab at that?
Please do.
As someone who works in nanomedicine, but also I'm very aware of huge amounts of research that have gone into nanomaterials and their interactions with cells and the human body. And quite frankly, it is very dependent on the composition of the nanomaterial. There's not a single generalized set of rules or ideas around toxicity that encompasses all nanomaterial systems. So lipid nanoparticles are quite benign compared to perhaps certain kinds of inorganic systems that should not be in the body. I think the science has advanced to the point where we have a large amount of data and understanding. That doesn't mean that we stop, though. I think that there are continued efforts to understand toxicity issues, but now it's much more focused on those specific areas. So in the field of nanomedicine, you will see that there are very extensive, there's a lot of work done in looking at how safe nanoparticles are in the body, where they circulate, where they distribute, and what the long-term impacts can be. And in other areas and fields, these kinds of studies also exist. So I think it's that in the expansion of nanotechnology, we've also extended the meaning of what toxicity means, what areas we need to apply that question to. And in those areas, we're seeing that work being done. And that absolutely needs to continue to be funded and continue to be supported by FDA and other agencies that are involved in our regulation.
Thanks, Paula.
Thanks very much for that. I think this is a great example. All sorts of interesting new properties popped up at the nanoscale, including toxicity that we didn't anticipate. So it's incumbent upon the science and technology to investigate those. Maria Zuber.
Yeah, thank you. I really want to compliment the working group for the examples in the report of outstanding achievements that have happened using nanotechnology. You know, when I read through that, it made me feel like this is the right time to make the recommendations that the working group made. I mean, in a sense, nano is the new micro. Okay, it's being used so pervasively in, you know, all fields of endeavor that it's not hidden or a mystery, or there's some field out there that has to discover that nano is available anymore. So at MIT, among our experimentalists, more than 40% of our experimentalists in science and engineering make use of equipment at the nano level. And, you know, our analysis, you know, indicates that it just keeps increasing every year. So I just wanted to point that out as, you know, maybe an amplification of some of the recommendations that you made in the report, that, you know, at the sort of university research level, what we're seeing, you know, certainly at my university, you know, very much is in line with the observations that you made. So thanks again.
Thanks, Maria, and thanks for reminding us that nano is alive and well and chugging along. Andrea Goldsmith.
Thanks so much. Thanks for the great report. And I do think it's a bold statement about the maturity of the field and that things should evolve in terms of its oversight. My question was really around the third recommendation on training. And obviously, workforce development in STEM is a big issue, not just for nanotechnology, but more generally. And so my question is, for the specific recommendation of having the NSTC subcommittee enhance and expand programs, multidisciplinary coursework across high schools, community colleges, universities, and industry, I guess my first question is, are there examples of that working well now across all of those constituents? And how would you focus that? And what partnerships would this subcommittee need to make to really be able to effectively train workforce across all four of those dimensions of the educational ecosystem?
Who would like to take that?
I can take a little stab at it. I think the real intent here was really aimed at sort of graduate level education, where I think people become specialized, and the intent is for people to become multilingual in that specialization. So they can be, nanoscientists and biologists, and nanoscientists, and material scientists, and nanoscientists, and semiconductor device specialists. I agree that there's a huge need for STEM in general, but that's sort of a broader need than we were trying to address with this recommendation.
Yeah, and Andrea, this came up in talking to some of the academia that we interviewed, in terms of when you ask them what is the one thing that can help, and the thought process was it is about encouraging students, graduate students, researchers to really take the time to be multidisciplinary, versus getting very narrow in a field. And I would say that the NSTC subcommittee, as well as some of the NNI efforts to date, have focused in this area. This is really trying to encourage them to double down in the new environment, to think about where can the coordination really help to broaden sort of the this multidisciplinary approach. So it was more around the university students, as Bill mentioned.
Well, that goes along well with the observation that nanoscience is now embedded in our products and technologies and moving towards the applications. So the scientists and technologists who work on the applications really do need to understand both sides, the inherent technology as well as the application. All right, Vicky Sato.
Thank you. Thank you to the working group for this report. It was educational for me to see such a clear example where a focused government-driven initiative really led to such tangible productivity and innovation across a broad set of application verticals. And to be able to say, this effort took us over the hump, if you will, of really catalyzing broad-based innovation in this country. It was very rewarding to hear. So thank you for that. And it's also, I think, really timely that you propose an alternative structure that can continue the momentum in certain areas and not others. And with regard to that, in the area of nanomedicines, lipid nanoparticles, as you point out, have been a breakthrough for the whole field of genetic medicines. But we're also at a point where new innovation in this area may actually get beyond delivering those medicines to very restricted tissue and protein types.
I appreciate your presence.
My question is
I'm going to go ahead and shut this off and continue it tomorrow.
Mechanisms for making sure that
please go over to whitehouse.gov and read the latest briefings, at least the last three.
Continues to get the financial support and the research support
that's there's a list of companies
to really fund that next generation
that Commerce is going to use
on that, because I think I just want to sort of stay anchored in how those kinds of decisions get made. Those don't